Coming home to the ground. I woke up this morning on a 4-inch foam pad. My bare feet echo splats on the floor as I wander to the bathroom in my baggy, mustard yellow sweatshirt. No pants. I am a teenager. This is my third burning adolescence. This is my apartment, but not my home. In the leasing office, they present me with a cheap blue rubber keychain. In white letters, it reads, "Welcome home." I throw it away. Please bring a thick rug of yellow or turquoise. Please bring plump pillows and your guitar. Please bring good tea and sweet cream, tart yogurt and fat blackberries. We need grapefruit and almonds. Please bring lavender lotion and coconut shampoo. Please bring delicate Christmas lights, sticks and desert rocks. We are coming home to the ground. We are camping here under our own stars. Bring a reading hammock for Pepper and old books, a daybed for Sophie and a red ball for Bee. Please bring laundry soap and bleach. Please bring something large and golden. Please send me someone to sit next to my bed, to hold my hand as I heal. I am holding my own against the tide of your driving hips and his way. I am carving out my own den, burning into my own trunk and scooping it out. These last splinters of my rage. The storm of heartbreak has mostly passed. Rain is dripping from leaves. What do I do now with this newly watered life? Thank you for letting me fall without dying, fall in love and off the rock and out of love and away from myself.
And that is Sarah Kappos.
Mm-hmm, it is.
When I first, welcome to Recovery Soapbox.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful to have you here. It's when I first came up with the idea of Recovery Soapbox, sponsored by Brighton Recovery Center, you're one of the very first guests I thought of having on. Gave you a call with Lacey in the parking lot. To me, you exemplify what this forum is about, and one of the clearly empowered, strong, creative, poetic, service-oriented people I've seen in my time in recovery.
They do all go together, all of those things.
Yes, and you exemplify them. And
thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to come on. And if you could just tell us a little bit about your story.
So I got sober in May of 2005, and from the very beginning of that experience, and even before I was sober, I have been desperately writing, and in my writing desperately seeking. And so I thought I would find the answer and not have to be sober. But what I discovered was I had to be sober to find the answer that I was seeking in my writing. So I continued that writing, and it has always been a place where I have found truth for myself. And so as I have gone along, and like you were saying, service-oriented, and gone on in my education, I studied art education at the University of Utah, and I realized that this tool could be just as empowering for the larger community as it had been for myself. And so I carried over my spiritual practice into my education, and the two came together. And so I have become a very grateful teacher. I'm grateful to be able to be a teacher. I feel like it's an honor and a privilege to teach and to be heard. And so I want that for more than just myself. I want that for everyone. And my experience has been that people flock to that opportunity. And so nothing brings me more joy than seeing that happen for them as it happened for me.
That's fantastic. So you are a poet, a painter, an artist all around. You've You're also a mother of 2. So when do you...
Three.
Three.
Right? I
3.
know.
How old?
So Sophie is 14, almost 15, and I feel
Good.
that age of 15 coming on, screaming up at my heels. She steals all my clothes. Pepper is 7, and Beckham is 5.
How do you find time to do this? Like your process of writing. I mean, I see the amounts. I mean, just sitting there, the amounts that you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
What does that process look like? Is it inspiration? Do you just sit down and or what does it look like?
So after I had my 3rd baby, after I had Beckham, I was going through a difficult time. A lot of my very closest friends had relapsed, and I was really alone and looking for myself, I think, or like that, that peace that comes when you just know that you're okay. And I was not okay. And it was 4:00 in the morning, and I was awake with Beckham, and I was feeding Beckham, and I, in an act of desperation, actually just started writing a blog, like almost like throwing a line out or like a message in a bottle. Like I just started writing, and I threw it out into the world, hoping that somebody would hear me. And the response was overwhelming to that. And so that has been my practice ever since then. I think Beckham was about 4 months old, maybe. So it's been just over 5 years that I've been writing that. And I wake up really early. Like if my eyes will pop open at, 5 a.m. And that's my time. My mind is most awake at that time. And so that's when I write before everybody wakes up.
I'm an early riser too. It seems that I'll get a little bit of coffee and a lot of that creative energy or just energy for the day shows up.
Yeah, it's precious time.
It for sure is. So as far as, do you find that there is a process when you want to paint, or is it something that, I mean, because clearly you have to carve out time to paint and you have a lot on your plate. So what does that look like as far as, because I think for some people getting even started and it's like, well.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that really helps me is I tell myself, whenever I encounter truth, it's always a paradox. So I tell myself, it doesn't matter. I'm going to paint and it doesn't matter. And of course it does. Like fundamentally, I believe as an artist that it matters. But if I tell myself, we're just going to do this for a little while and it doesn't matter, then it's easier to start. When I was in school, my paintings were huge. They were like as tall as me, which is not tall, but tall for a painting, 5 feet. And I would lug these big things around the campus and wonder, what the hell am I doing? And it was satisfying to have that whole big space. Now I don't have space like that. So I usually will just carry a sketchbook with me, and I've been drawing a lot and finding comfort in the smaller spaces and the more immediate lines. I believe that my artwork adapts as I need it to. So I need it to be smaller and immediate because I do have 3 kids. So that's what I do these days.
You found some really big spaces, though. You did
the
wall at Fit to Recover.
I know.
The whole inside of that. So it kind of seems to be your thing. Like if you can find a wall that will paint on, then you're going to do it. You also, and I don't know the details of this. I know that you'd done some paintings and then you donated them. Was that to the road home or where was that?
I've done that a couple times. The most recent, the one we did with Fit to Recover, is in the VOA's youth shelter. So it's a new facility downtown. And I think that one is about 4 by 8 feet probably. And that one is a huge collaboration between so many people. I mean, I just kind of started asking around to people who had been in a similar situation to what those residents would feel. Like, how does it feel to sit on the street and feel like nobody sees you? And so that piece came out of those conversations. And if you see the piece, it's, someone said to me, you're sitting there and people who walk by see
so this is someone that's on the streets.
Who had been.
Yeah.
They see a half-dead person or someone who doesn't count. And what you don't see is all that they wish that they could do, or their colorful aspirations you don't see. And so that's what that piece is. Like, it's a black and white figure sitting kind of hunched over, and then above him is a much more vibrant world that is within each person, which we have seen.
And all around us.
Yes, right. Which we have seen over and over again. People come to life. So it's a depiction of that.
I've seen it before you donated it, and it's wonderful. It exemplifies all that. I think great art, whether I went, when I've traveled and went and seen some of the great artists, whatever, it moves, and your art moves. You feel something,
right?
And art's a reflection of what we all are, really.
Right. Well, I tell people when they come to my writing class, and so many of them will say, "I'm not a writer," and I tell them, a writer is somebody who writes, and today we are all going to write, and so today we are all writers, and it doesn't take much, really. When we're reading something, the thing that gets us or that enlivens us can be the smallest little detail that a writer will lay down, and you read it and you feel it and you're like, oh yes, I know that. And that's what we want. That's the connection that we're looking for, that we're always seeking, is just those little moments of like, oh yes, I know that. I felt that. And that can be articulated in simple ways. And then as I evolve as a writer, hopefully I can articulate things that are a little bit more subtle and harder to put your finger on. And that's a service to the reader, because they're like, oh yes, I have experienced that and I didn't know how to say it, and you said it. Thank you for saying it.
Yeah, thank you for saying what I feel.
Yeah.
And no one's it's great.
So it's an exchange. It's very much an exchange, and that's why I say it's an honor to have an audience and to be heard. Because if nobody ever heard it, it wouldn't be very satisfying to write it,
Yeah, it would be just for you, and also deny the other people from having that experience with.
Right.
So
yes.
As far as Fit to Recover goes, you do a river riding class there, and you've been doing that a while. And I've been saying I would come out, and I haven't, and I'm still going to, but now I'll say it on here.
Good.
Last time I said it to Ian, I fulfilled the speaker. So now that I'm saying it here, I'll have to actually
good.
do it. But
good.
Tell me, how long have you been doing it there?
I think it's been about 2 years.
So really since it opened.
Yeah, pretty soon after it opened, I think, because we've been open 2.5 years. The practice was taught to me by a woman named Nan Seymour. And again, that was another one of those life preservers that came to me, and she invited me to come and write with her and learn this practice with her. And I showed up and wrote every week and cried every week, and I was so grateful to her. And I said, I would love to carry this out into my community. Can I do that? And she said, absolutely. I trust you to do that. And so it's a very simple process. It's stream of conscious writing. It's uncensored. It's there's no craft to it necessarily. It's just writing to discover. And those classes are magical. Anyone who comes once usually wants to come again, and they tell their friend, you got to try this. And I had someone say to me once, you pay money to just go sit in a room and write with other people? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. It's worth it.
I recently, I've been reading a Dr. Jordan Peterson who wrote Self-Authoring, and
I need to read that, I think.
But he goes into detail. There's a selfauthoring.com, and we can cut it out or keep it, whatever. But he discusses in detail why writing helps the brain. So when you write about anything, it's activating a part of your brain that helps with the processing. And actually, so they encourage you, if you've had something that you either still get upset about in the past, they encourage you to write about it. I think that's why when you go into treatment, you write a biography. Right. They're hoping that you'll delve in. But it's an amazing thing with the brain. And when you start doing especially handwriting.
Yeah, handwriting,
so
definitely.
I would say to those people that say, you pay $70 or whatever the dollars are to go sit. It's like, well, would you pay to go talk to a therapist? Because it's therapy.
Oh, yeah.
And
accidental therapy. Like, we don't know that that's what we're doing, but yeah.
Well, and learning about yourself and others and our commonality, it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We joke about that, about the cost of therapy versus the cost of river riding. It's a great deal.
It is. Absolutely, it is. So prior to you getting sober,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly you were born artistic, correct? I mean,
Right.
And
Yes.
so prior to getting sober, what did it look like, your writing and painting versus now?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, that I joke about that because I'm a far better artist than I ever was before, when I was not sober. And I struggled with the stereotype or the belief that that chaos that comes with heavy drinking and drug use and all of that. I mean, so many of the writers who I loved, in high school, where I first fell in love with writing and art. Everybody loves Van Gogh, and he was an alcoholic, and Jack Kerouac and all of those beat poets I loved, and they did huge amounts of drugs in San Francisco, and so that was my idea, is like, this is how you tap in, and this is justified because my brain is so full of this madness that I have to do this. This is part of my identity. And so to get sober was really scary because I felt like I was going to lose that. And the thing that I didn't see was, first of all, the dishonesty. As a person who, as an alcoholic who was drinking, I wore many masks. And those masks kept me from doing much that was honest or deliberate in my writing or in my artwork. I couldn't do that. I didn't know how. And so it was like a game. And I was like a kid playing dress up. I was dressing up as an artist or as a poet. And today I'm a far more hardworking, more disciplined. I do it whether I want to or not, whether I feel like it or not. And that's something that I have learned with being sober. And then also, I had a professor once when I was, I think, 17 and first in college, and because I dropped out of high school and went straight to college, where everything was more substantial in my mind, which I think is true, but whatever. And he said to me, you are obviously talented, and you, yes, can write, but what are you saying? I peel away the layers of what you're saying, and it's like peeling an onion, and there's nothing in the middle. You have no authority or experience. You don't stand for anything. Man, you can imagine the drunken rants that I went on about that guy and what he doesn't understand. But he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. I was not able to say with conviction anything.
Some of the things we need to hear the most are the things that really create that.
Yes.
Because those are the ones we have to really get honest with ourselves.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm grateful to him for saying that.
And how long did it take you, though, until you realized it was true?
8-10 years. That's all right.
It is.
It was in there. I didn't forget it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when I think of writing, and you brought up a lot of points that resonate with me, the creativity versus the substances. Musician at heart, had some success at a young age and played, and I was terrified to let go of the drugs. I associated everything I did creatively with it because everybody I respected, all the artists I loved, that's what they did. And some of them died very young. And in my mind, even at like 26, 27, is like coming up on that magical number, the Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix number, the number of, and intrigued by it, not like, oh, what a sad, awful tragedy. We lost these people so early.
Right.
Almost like, oh, you got to get it done before 28 because that's when we're going.
Oh my gosh. I remember having a conversation early on outside of Village Inn with someone about specifically Van Gogh, I think it was. We romanticize him, and we romanticize many artists. And the conversation was, imagine how that must have felt for his brother Theo, who was always having to bail him out and pay his bills and put him back in rehab and respond to all of his letters that were saying the same thing over and over and making the same promises about how he was just about to figure it out and all of that stuff. And that was something that really hit me deeply, was, of what use is it if the world thinks I'm this, but my family or the people that I immediately care about, I can't be any good in their life. And so that's kind of like that thing that the professor was saying to me, was like, what is at the heart of what you're doing? What are you really doing? And my thought about what art is changed in that moment, in that conversation. And I realized that I didn't want to play that game anymore.
I have written down right here, what is art to you?
Oh, man.
So you just said it changed
Yeah.
What is art to you?
For me, it is no more significant than anything else that a human being does. It's just as significant as someone in a country far away deliberately washing laundry. It's a practice. It's a practice in coming to understand the things that are universal about life. So that's another part of that demystification of art for me when I was studying it in school, and when I was realizing all this, is like, this is just one language in many, many languages that we have as human beings to try to communicate. This is what matters to me. This is my experience. And we can do that successfully if we practice, or we can fall short if we don't. So it's a practice, and it's one that makes sense to me and that's intuitive to me. And I no longer hold it as something that's outside of everything else. I think I used to think that, and now I see it as a language.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, it frees me up to just be honest and not take it so seriously.
Yeah, I've been the last year traveling a lot and looking at a lot of the great art in person. And I think you're right. It's not separate from us. It's within all of us. We might not be the ones that are putting it on the canvas, but the fact that it resonates with us is proof of that language. We understand it.
Right.
So,
and that's what it's meant for. I think so. How many times have you heard people say, I don't get poetry, or I don't understand art, or I don't understand modern art, which who the hell does? Like, it's not for that. It's not a vehicle to separate us. It's supposed to be a vehicle to connect us. And so that was why I switched my major. Actually, I was just a studio art major, and I was painting with all these, self-indulgent kids who just got out of high school, God bless them. And I was like, what are we doing? If this isn't for everyone, then what are we really doing? Like, I don't want this exclusive idea about it. And so I changed my major to art education, and when I added the education aspect to it, then art became for everyone. And then it was like, okay, I can commit to this, because I struggled. I was in college from the time I was 16, and I didn't graduate until I was 31, because I just couldn't quite understand what was significant enough for me to commit myself to.
Yeah.
So
you found a great audience at Fit to Recover, and
yes.
one that I know it's resonating with. Fit to Recover brings in all kinds. I mean, people are coming in that want to get well. They want to recover from whatever they're recovering from. What do you think is resonating? Because those classes keep growing.
Right.
Why?
People get to have those moments of clarity where they realize they can do something they didn't think they could do, which is, I think, very much the spirit of Fit to Recover, not just the creative expression, but in the gym as well. Like, they get to have the experience of, wow, all I have to do is show up and put effort into this, and I can do it. And so that feels really good to them. And not only do they do it, they don't do it in isolation, they do it in the presence of others. And to be seen and heard in the presence of others feels really good if we can allow ourselves to do it. And so if they can just get in the door and do that, then they want to do it again. And they get to kind of break down that. And I remember this, when I was early in my own sobriety, of like, I had this definition of myself and it was largely negative. And because I was willing to show up and try, that definition of myself started to shift into something positive. And I came to see myself as somebody who is capable and got an appetite for that. And so I think that's why Fit to Recover is growing, is because people get to have that experience. And it comes from them. Like, all we do is give them the environment, and the work is theirs.
So if somebody wants to come and check it out, there's an event on July 1?
Yes. So we are having a reading at the end of each river riding session, which is 6 weeks long. We meet and we workshop our one piece to read. And so we give a reading, which is very brave. Most of the people who come on week 1 don't think that they're going to read by the end. But they get to have the experience, because we write and we also share. So we read out loud in the river riding class. And so they get to have the experience of reading out loud and being heard, and it starts to feel good. So by the time we need to stand at the mic and read, they're happy to do it. And so I think we have about 10 poets who are reading, and it's at the gym, July 1st at 8:30.
July 1st at Fit to Recover at 8:30, and we'll post the address and the info so you can see it.
Wonderful.
In early recovery, thinking back to that,
Mm-hmm.
what was some of the hardest to go, like, what was the hardest thing to go, like, what was the hardest aspect of it? What was the most difficult aspect? And then now looking back on it, what would you say? Like, what would you help with?
So many things were hard. I felt like everything was hard.
Everything was hard.
But I think just continuing, even though I felt like the other shoe was going to drop, I carried that for a long time of, yeah, this is all fine. And I've pulled myself back up before, but I know I can't maintain it. I've never been able to maintain it. I had dropped out of college, I think, 3 times by that point, and I had moved to different places all over the country, and I would arrive there, like I went to the East Coast for a little while to get sober, and I arrived there with the best of intentions and all of this bright hope for what I was going to do and be, and I had always been told that I had some kind of potential, but I could never maintain it. And so to continue to trust that there was something bigger than me that was going to help me sustain that, I think was hard. Probably the hardest thing was making peace with, yes, you do need help to do this, and to continue to reach out for that help and let that grace, or whatever you want to call it, to continue to trust in that. I mean, I had moments where I just couldn't see how that was going to happen. Like, I got divorced when I was 1 year sober. To take out a bunch of student loans to finish my degree in school. I felt hugely inadequate. And so to learn to trust in grace, I think, was the hardest, but also the most beautiful. I mean, those are those moments where there is no one else who can tell me that it's going to be okay. There's no one else who can access that deep down belief that I carry. The only person who can deal with that part is me. And so those moments were very hard won and very precious to me. And I respect that in other people, that where you get to the point where no one else is going to be able to reassure you, and then you get to find out what you really believe.
That's awesome. So change of location alone didn't work.
No, not at all. No, I woke up under a bridge in New Jersey, and
Really?
yeah. Oh, well, that's just one story of many.
Under a bridge.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you got there? Well, literally under a bridge, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers song.
Yeah.
Under a bridge.
There's so many bushes. And I was just in this big green bush, and they have this strange gas station called Wawa. And I remember going to the Wawa,
And I bet your head felt wah, wah, wah.
yeah,
wah.
there's geese on the sign. I don't know how. And I remember somebody dropping me off at a bridge. I think we bought cigarettes, and that was when I knew that moving
Change of
all the way
location isn't
across the
gonna work.
country wasn't going to make any difference at all for me. And so that was the first time that I tried to be sober. I think I was 18 then.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you when you finally, it did stick? And
25.
So you had a good run.
Yeah.
And how long have you been sober now?
12 years.
Fantastic. So looking back at the year one, now flipping that back around to the hardest, what is the best thing for you? I mean, I know there's so many things but what are some of the best differences of your life today versus what your life was like then?
I don't carry guilt anymore. That was one of the hardest things for me to be free of was when I got sober, my daughter Sophie was 2, and I felt really horrible for not being what I thought that I was supposed to be for her, and guilt for not being what I thought I was supposed to be in general. And so I have let go of a lot of that notion of what I am supposed to be, and realize that I get to choose. I get to choose what I am, and without apology. To be able to live without apology and without guilt and shame is hard. It's hard to get there. It's a long process. And I love getting older.
That's good.
I love it so much, of just like, all of these identities that I thought I was supposed to carry, I just don't have to, which frees me to do what I really want to do, which ironically is kind of what I really wanted to do before I ever started using. It's, in a way, I feel like I'm coming back to the same dreams that I had when I was 15 and 16 years old.
You're just able to fulfill them.
Yeah.
And they're able to manifest, whether that intention or whatever it is. Seems like that it's a lot easier when we're sober to formulate those intentions into actual actions. And
I have to say the one other thing that I didn't foresee is how many people love me and I love them, which sounds so cheesy, but
not really. Sounds great.
Well, I really do feel overwhelmed by that often. At like I told you earlier, it's a privilege to be able to be a writer and a teacher and have people care about that. Like, to the people who I've been allowed to know and to connect with, that's probably the most precious thing to me is that community of people. And absolutely, Fit to Recover has been the cornerstone of that. And it's not been all easy. Like, I mean, you've been around for a while. I mean, it's a lot of very sensitive, passionate people down there. And for us to find common ground and to be able to have a community, I didn't ever think that was going to happen for me, because I came from a religion where I did not fit. And so to find a place where I can thrive and I can fit is so satisfying to me.
I can remember seeing like the smaller boot camps when Ian would there would be like 4 or 5 of us that would show up, and he would work us extra hard because there wasn't more people there. And then now you see what it's become, and it's community. It is love. And I think that everyone there, Ian, you, James, all of you, Georgia, you all, Emmett, Tess, the list goes on. There's so many.
Yeah.
You emanate that love. And I don't think it sounds cheesy, because I think when you're operating from a place of love and compassion and kindness and you want to help people, then that building, which was just a warehouse, is now full of that love. And
well, and I guess I sometimes hear things from those two different vantage points of like where I am now, and I've experienced it and I understand the value of it. But then I remember myself as a cynical, 17-year-old kid, and all of this stuff I couldn't connect to. Like whenever we would talk about community in school or anything like that, I was just like, I don't care. I don't believe that this is real, and I don't care, and I don't want to hear about it from you guys.
I've noticed at Fit to Recover, though, there is something there that attracts some of the younger pop. It's cool.
We try to be cool. Ian's very cool.
He is. He's getting older and he's still cool.
Yep.
Very much. So speaking of Fit to Recover, so you have the creative writing, obviously, July 1st, you want to check that out. But then another thing you're doing is paint night. So talk a little bit about that.
Paint night is really fun. And usually when you see paint night, it's in connection to wine, and you go and you drink wine and you paint. And so my thought was, well, we could do that without the wine, and that would be fun too. And it's an introduction to the medium. I really, when I first started it, my friend said, well, this is how you do paint night, and you have to have the same design for everyone, and you tell them paint red, and then you paint this green square, and I told her, I just can't, I can't do that. I fundamentally disagree with that. But what I do is I create a space where you can experiment, and you can try, and you can fall in love with color and shape, and be with your friends. And one thing that I always remind them is fall in love with your painting at every stage. So even before we start to paint and there's a rough drawing, that's beautiful. Even when you have an untouched palette of colors, that's beautiful. We are not worried about the final product. We are going to have an experience, and that seems to really help people loosen up and to have fun and allow themselves to be surprised. And so far, we've had a great time.
And when is that?
So it's once a month. The next one I do believe is July 17th. It's we try to do it the third Monday of the month. We're so busy down there.
That's a good thing.
Right? Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
In the beginning we talked about service and art, and you've clearly found a very unique way of combining them. And really when I hear you speak, it's like, well, wait a minute, art is service because you're bringing something to which is, but could you talk a little about what service has meant to your recovery, and what that's looked like and what it would look like without it? Probably non-existent as far as recovery goes.
Right, yes. Yeah. So I remember, the first year is very much just internal for me. Like, I don't have much to give. I'm just trying to survive. And then I remember when there was a fundamental flip. And because you hear, a lot of people will start using again after about a year or so, because that initial bliss of being free from that whole cycle kind of starts to wear off. And it's like, well, now what? And so I could feel that my focus needed to shift from me to you, and that was only going to happen if I took action. If I really was willing to sacrifice of my time and of myself, and to be uncomfortable and be scared and do stuff I felt largely inadequate to do. But anyone who's ever served, I think, feels that way. I think feels like, well, why me? I'm not capable of doing this, and they do it anyway. And so now it doesn't really make sense for me to think about life in any other way. And that's the freedom of being in recovery, is like my focus shifted from what about me to what about you, and I got to experience the joy of that.
So what is the difference in someone that's struggling and they have that? I mean, because I think I could do more service, but I definitely do service. And every time I do it, whatever it is, however that opportunity comes, initially every time I have resistance.
Right, yes.
Every time.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's with anything productive or good. There's resistance.
Yes.
And so I guess if there's anything I could share is that to go against that resistance.
Yeah.
And if the more you don't want to do it, you probably should.
Well, and so when I was in school, I was offered so many helpful tools that I didn't use until I was out of school, and then I was like, I need to learn some stuff. But my professor had told me to read this book called The War of Art, and basically what it says is, yes, resistance. Okay, it's there, and we don't need to waste a bunch of energy dissecting it or trying to figure out why it's there. Like, all I need to know is it will be there. And
don't let it win.
Right. And so I've gotten much better at acknowledging it and just, continuing on.
Thank you for being there.
Right.
I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah, like I don't really even have to have a conversation with it anymore. I can just be like, yeah, I knew you were going to be here. Hi. See you later. And then I just keep going. And I think that's another reason why what we do at Fit to Recover with the classes that I offer and the things we offer in the gym is why it's so helpful, is because every day we get to encounter our resistance and we get to act anyway. And we get to discover that it doesn't need to be in charge.
No, and when you discover that and you do it anyway, life, for me anyway, my experience has been it's got dramatically better. I get to sit here and talk to you today.
And we get to also discover that because it exists, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us. Like, I think I have had this belief, and I've heard other people like, well, I shouldn't feel this way, or what's wrong with me, or why, and they feel guilt about it. They feel guilty that they have this resistance, and they think that they shouldn't. And I always will gently remind them, of course it's here. Yes, there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. There's nothing at all wrong with you that you are experiencing resistance. We all do, but we don't have to take it so seriously.
I'm sure you get some resistance when you're climbing. So Sarah is a rock climber.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
I learned to climb when I was 21 years old. So
you weren't sober yet?
No.
Did you used to drink or use and climb?
Dude, a cold beer after you've been climbing in the desert all day, wrap your hands around it.
But not during.
Oh, it's so good. No, I don't think we climbed drunk very often. We didn't do that until after we were done.
So what does that look like now?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because it has become really vital for me in the last 6 months. I didn't do it for a while, and I was very afraid because I was having babies, and so I was in that cycle of being pregnant and then recovering from being pregnant and then having a baby, and I didn't feel strong or free. And these last few months, I have really become unburdened and dropped a lot of my armor. And when I say drop armor, it's a physical dropping of armor, but also mentally. I don't feel like I need to protect myself in the same way that I have. And so, ironically, I'm free to climb in a more powerful way. And in the poem that I read originally when we started, it talks about, like, thank you for letting me fall without dying. And I feel more willing and able to see just how strong that I actually can be, and I'm willing to fall. And I've never been willing to fall as I am in the last 6 months. Like, I'm willing to give every ounce of my strength and to fall. And I have fallen a lot. I've fallen a lot in the last few months, and ironically, even that is a privilege.
I don't think I ever noticed until right now how many metaphors and parallels there are between rock climbing and just life in general, but
Right.
recovery and overcoming and obstacles.
Yeah.
I get up there and I'm terrified of heights. It's one of those things.
Right. Well, that's what I was just talking to my friend about climbing in this way. And you cannot fool the rock. You cannot do anything but have an honest experience, because the rock doesn't care. You will just meet it, and whatever is going to happen, and you can't manipulate it. And so I have a great amount of respect for that process.
So do you participate in are there classes at Fit to Recover because there's a wall down there?
Mm-hmm.
And
so that is in the works. Rachel climbs with me as well, and we are talking about putting together a class where you can come and you can learn the fundamentals, the really basic stuff that you would learn on your first day of climbing. So you learn how to tie your figure 8 knot, you learn about all the safety checks on your harness, you learn how to belay, and you learn some basic techniques, and then hopefully we'll go, monthly or whatever, and go outside and climb.
So many good things going on
Right
down
mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find balance with my fitness, but fitness has been huge with my recovery. Talk a little. I've seen the transformation in you and just the continued effort. Talk a little bit about what that's been like as far as your on all aspects. Yeah.
So the blog I described that I started when Beckham was a baby, the platform was recovery from an eating disorder, and what the residue of that feels like on a daily basis. So, yes, I was sober. Yes, I had largely recovered from the behaviors of that eating disorder, but there was a residue and a really negative, deep down belief in myself and a fear of thriving. I read this book called Gaining, and it was about life after eating disorder. And I can't remember the woman's name who wrote it, but even that word terrified me. Gaining, as someone who has struggled with anorexia and bulimia, to gain is not what you want to do.
Interesting.
And so when I started at the gym, at first it felt really good, and then I could feel that I was gaining, and there's a responsibility with that. There's a responsibility with gaining strength that I wasn't sure if I wanted. And I left the gym crying many times because I felt cornered. I can't stay small. I know that my body is asking me to let it be strong, and I'm scared of that. And so to be able to gain in strength within a community of people, I wonder if it's the only way that I could have done it. If I would have been in the gym by myself, I think the things that were happening in my head, I think they would have scared me away. But because I was able to go through that with the support of people and to laugh sometimes and to have them witness the whole process, I was able to work through that stuff and allow myself to gain in strength. And today, I am quite amazed by it and really grateful.
What an example. I mean, working in the industry I work in and coming across to see you and to know that you were afflicted with addiction and afflicted with an eating disorder, and to hear you telling stories of climbing rock walls and gaining and sharing your art and doing what you do is it's why we do what we do.
Right.
Because we can get better.
Absolutely.
And if we can do it, anybody can do it.
Yes. I am not the exception. No, anyone can.
I think there is I was talking to Ian a little bit about this on the podcast, but I think there is a difference obviously in personalities. You clearly drive to help. You feel it and you go for it. And would you say that's more for you or for the people that you're helping?
That's something that we always are learning. And that's something that I'm currently learning about. I've actually been learning and reading about archetypes. So stories that repeat themselves. And
Joseph Campbell.
Right. Yes. And coming to understand that this has always been me, and I don't need to compare myself to anyone else or figure out what they're here to do, which sounds kind of like mystical and funky, but all I know is that for myself, I have always been athletic. I have always been a teacher. I have always had a lot of energy to put out words. Why? I don't know, but I feel like it's more of a remembering for me, like, oh yeah, this is me. It's not something that I had to go out and fabricate. Like, this is me. This has always been me. And perhaps it comes from growing up as the oldest of 7 kids. Who knows? Like, what is nature and what is nurture? But at this point, I just don't really care. I'm just, that's that living without apology.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You continually, and I want to just emphasize again, when I started, so I had this idea for this Recovery Soapbox, and I wanted to share stories. Mm-hmm. For anybody that wants to come down to Fit to Recover and be around a bunch of people that are just fantastic and inspirational to me, Sarah, you're one of those.
Thank you.
I think it's hard to measure the people we're helping, because maybe some of them don't say anything, right? But
right.
I can tell you, I remember, and I'd be surprised, I don't expect anybody else to remember some of the things I do, but I can remember the first time I met you was at a boot camp, and you came up and just, you sincerely welcomed me, and you sincerely, it was real, as it is with everybody down there. And I appreciate that. And I would encourage anybody to, if somebody wants to get in touch, not necessarily with you, but with Fit to Recover, just should they come down, or when's the next, or just go on to fittorecover.com, or? We had a woman come in just the other day. I think I had just finished teaching my noon class, and she walked in, and she was scared but also excited, and she said, I've been meaning to come down here for a long time, and today is the day, and here I am, and I want a membership. And immediately, like, I looked her in the eye and I said, you did something so brave today. You took an action that you had been wanting to do for a long time, and that is amazing. I'm so glad you're here. Like, that's the kind of response that I always try to give, and that I think a lot of us down there try to give. So however you can get there. Like, if you need to stalk us on Facebook, We have a website, fittorecover.org. Our schedule is on there. It's a $5 drop-in. You can drop in any day and just come to a class and talk to me or Ian or Georgia. And then I think that's part of what's great about Fit to Recover is you can come in and say, I have been stalking you on Facebook for a long time, and I want to be down here doing this with you guys. And you will get a response. You will get a warm response. You won't get a formulaic. You will get a connection to another human being. I know what my experience has been with Fit to Recover, and just seeing it grow. And I felt it at the park when I was in treatment. Mm-hmm. And I didn't participate the first time. I sat and watched, and then the next Saturday, right, I was healthy enough to. But what has this been like for you? I mean, it's been quite the ride, and you're so involved. What's your title there? Like, what do you do so many different, you were artists in residence, and now, I mean, you're there. What's that? Oh, I can't even tell you how many times I've referenced my original conversation with Ian before we had a building, when winter was coming and it was going to be cold, and I had realized that I could get a lot stronger at those boot camp workouts, because after the first one I could hardly move, and I was like, oh, new challenge. Well, this is great. And he said, someday we're going to have a building and you're going to paint it. And I thought he was nuts. I was like, whatever, who is this kid? And I said, okay, if you get a building, I'll paint it. And from that moment, when you saw that wall, were you like... I was like dancing around on the concrete floor. I was like, look what we have. Get me some ladders. And that ladder it's a good thing I'm a climber, because that ladder was a rickety mess. And some days it was just Ian and I in that gym,
painting and talking, and I know that we have had our periods of growth where we're figuring stuff out, but I am deeply committed to him and to that gym in a way that I've been committed to very few things. When I was in school, and I knew that I wanted to do art in the community, I knew that I wanted to be involved like at the grassroots level, like where you're just working as hard as you can with people who believe in what they're doing. That's what I wanted. And so when I met Ian in the park, it was like, this is a dream come true. This is the thing that I wanted when I was studying in school, and here it is. So I'm just going to give all of my energy to it. And it has grown exponentially. It's astounding. And I am in it no matter what.
And a big part of it. And I think that, the energy that you put into it and that everybody's put into it is why it's growing, because it's honest, it's real, it's so helpful. I think one of the pieces of art that I enjoy the most that you've done is just the hands up with everybody. Because, I mean, again, when I was in treatment, I can remember you saying, bring it in. And I had accomplished it for the first time in the boot camp. And I mean, a couple weeks sober, I'm beat up.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I know.
And to have done that felt like an accomplishment. It's like, oh, there it is. Wait a minute. I can do this. But the hands in, I felt that. Whatever that is, the grace that you speak of, got a little bit of the goosebumps. And so when you go into Fit to Recover, for those, if you haven't been there, go check out the mural and see. But there's one of them with all the hands, a couple different places with the hands up. You did a great job.
Thank you.
On that.
Yeah, that needed to be on there. Definitely.
It does. It's been funny to see as it grows, because there's such a big, it's like everyone just touching that Ian in the middle. And it's this giant, massive 50 to 60
I know,
people.
and I imagine those people, it's their first day and they're probably standing there like, what am I doing? This is so weird.
I talked about my favorite cereal and now he's saying to bring it in.
Oh,
Listen to Justin Bieber.
That's how it is, though, when you're getting sober. I mean, there were so many moments where I was just like, how did I go from that to this? Like, what am I even doing? And to be able to surrender to that, it was really such a beautiful story.
It is. All of them. The stories of recovery are beautiful, because the flip side is.
I know. Well, yeah. So that's why we do it, because it's like, well, I may not understand this guy and his cereal talk, but anything is better than what I was doing. So fine, dude, right. Talk about your favorite cereal.
It is a great way to, I don't know where he learned that from, but it is a fantastic way to break the ice and meet a stranger. And I think what it really is connection.
Yeah.
It's like forcing us to connect.
Well, and that's like that thing I was describing to you about writing, and people doubt whether or not they're a writer. But the favorite cereal, what it does is it's one of those little things where it's like, oh yeah, I know that. I may not understand a lot, but I know about cereal. And so then it breaks, it's like, it lets them know, oh, this really isn't so hard.
Absolutely. Do you have another poem?
I'm sure I could. Yeah, this is good. So this is just an excerpt from an earlier post from that blog I described to you. It's called Chrysalis Break.
Chrysalis.
The idea behind Chrysalis Break is that I was breaking from my chrysalis to fly. So it's the...
Also, chrysalis is what's...
Yes, so the chrysalis, is that funky shape, that cocoon pod thing that the butterfly...
a butterfly?
Yes.
There's a butterfly over your shoulder.
Yeah. So it's it breaks down like those tiny little incremental movements that it takes to actually get out of there. We think like, oh, well, you were in a chrysalis and now you're a butterfly, but all of those tedious little tiny movements that occur that allow that to happen. And so that's what I was trying to articulate in this blog. And so this is an example of what river writing is. This is just stream of conscious. This is uncensored. This is just getting that stuff out and kind of making peace with resistance.
So with river writing, you can't stop, right? And you don't edit.
Right. So we set a timer. Usually it's about 10 minutes, and the goal is to have the pen continue to move on the page, even if what you're saying is gibberish, and it's kind of to outrun the editor and to discover the things that you wouldn't have written down that maybe
Stream of consciousness.
You need
tap
to.
into that.
Yes.
That's cool.
So I know I'm going too fast because I have not posted a blog in weeks. Now let me clarify, when I say going too fast, it is not a productive kind of speed. It involves searching the classified ads for used rock climbing shoes, reorganizing my car, which is a joke, scrolling through Facebook, examining my skin for blemishes, and the worst offender, scanning celebrity photos on omg.com. This is how I know that I'm avoiding my own soul. Celebrity gossip is the antithesis of spirituality. So it ought to be no surprise that Lydia came hissing up from the basement today. Hers is the voice of escape, of entitlement, of self-loathing, and of isolation. She fears everything. She says, "You are a writer who is not writing, an artist who is not painting. Everyone is in your way. You are a failure. You should run away. Run. Get out." She loves Radiohead, Ryan Adams, and the soundtrack to Requiem for a Dream. She relishes the empty belly, and she takes pride in her own ribs. She is smug and rarely speaks. She is a watcher of people, and she writes it all down in her notebook. I have not heard her screams for a long time. She wants out but does not know there are no bars. They are painted on her eyelids. The cold of their steel is in her own palms. She makes herself sick because she is afraid of everything. She wants an excuse to stay indoors. But I know her. I know what she is. She is me, and we are in this together. So I take her cold fingers and we walk out into the sun. We look up into it and let the waves roll over us, all the while keeping eyelids up. I breathe in my nose and air fills my chest. It goes down into my empty belly and swirls. Tears slip and the top of my head tingles. My ears relax and my shoulders are untied. God, please take this. I don't want to run away. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm sorry. And this is how I stay. I stay, and there is more work. There is always more work. But it is work I choose. I want to be a mother. I want to be a writer. I want to be a painter. I want strong muscles. I want to be a teacher. I want to give all that I have.
And you do.
Right?
Yeah.
I try.
I love the bravery that comes with reading what you've written.
Mm-hmm.
It's to get that vulnerable and share, and it then empowers others, because while you were reading that, I drifted off into my own inspiration, and I literally was thinking about listening to you too, and then my brain's all over the place.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the Chrysalis and that, the metaphor for recovery, I mean,
right,
coming out, and all the little things that it takes in order to be able,
yeah,
to progress.
Well, and that's that horizontal spirituality. That's that. I always thought God was like way up here, and I had to somehow get up here vertically, and what I have learned is that it's all right here on this plane as an exchange. This is how we activate each other, and there's plenty of that.
Well, thank you for this exchange.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Is there any thing else that we should, as far as coming down, if you're interested in obviously all the different things that Sarah's doing at Fit to Recover, you can go to fittorecover.org. Mm-hmm. It's also Fit to Recover on Facebook, or just go down to Fit to Recover July 1st. I'll be there. And love to hear and check out everybody sharing the river riding, and then there'll be more information down there. Genuinely appreciate you and all you do.
Thank you.
And thanks
I feel
for
that.
thanks for coming on Recovery Soapbox. Says Sarah Kappos and Josh Hoff signing off. Thanks.